I would love to make some videos about choosing an editor, or how do you decide if someone is a good editor. But that's really tricky. I was talking about it online with somebody recently. The hard thing is, one, it takes a lot of experience. So if someone's been a New York editor for 20 years and they've edited tons of books, that experience is really useful, especially if they had a traditionally publishing, like if they were working as an editor in a traditional publishing house, then they knew they were fixing a story to make it sell better. And that's very different from, like, what I used to do was, I was an editor, I studied literature, but I was fixing authors' books for self-publishing authors, and those authors weren't thinking about necessarily making a better product to make it sell better. So I mean, I focused on, I improved the writing, I made it better, I fixed a lot of things, but I don't know now if I was really invested in making it the best product that it could be. But I also know, working with authors, most authors, when they hire an editor, they're not ready to productivize their book. They just want to tell their book a better way. But I also know a lot of amazing editors who don't have a master's degree, who haven't worked in a New York book publishing house. They just love writing, and they're awesome at it, and they're fantastic at seeing problems with the story and giving critical feedback. So it's difficult to just look at a resume and to know whether or not they're a good editor. The other weird thing is, a lot of editors aren't very tech savvy, or they don't know how to build a website. So there's a lot of amazing editors who have really ugly websites. And the thing about selling things online is, if you find an editor with an ugly website, it's tempted to look down on their professional capability, it's a weird thing. But like for Book Butchers, I know how much design impacts sales. So for the Book Butchers site, I focused on branding and design. So we have an amazing looking site that appeals to authors, which boosts our credibility. We are really good, but there are lots of other editors who are equally as good. It's difficult to choose an editor and to know if they're going to do your book justice. Another issue to watch out for, I don't think this was even the topic. Oh yeah, working with a professional editor. The other thing to watch out for, a lot of writers will say, find an editor that you feel comfortable with, that you have a good working relationship with. That's only true to the point where if you don't feel comfortable with the editor, you're not going to listen to their critique. But the problem with that advice is, it shouldn't be the editor's responsibility to get you to be open to making the changes that the editor suggests. So you don't want to find the editor that you're going to listen to. That's your problem. That's your fault. You need to be comfortable listening to an editor and taking critical professional advice, and then you need to find the best editor who can give you the best advice. It may not be the one that you feel really comfortable with, which is weird, but it's true. There may be an amazing editor. Like, I don't have great bedside manner personally. My emails are very terse and short, and some authors want a more glowy relationship with lots of feedback. So I'll get a lot of emails from authors where they'll send me 2,000 word emails talking about all this stuff and their feelings and how they feel about everything, which isn't helpful at all. For them, they're building relationship. They want to relate with me. But my job as an editor is to make their book better. And so putting a lot of time in building that relationship and sending those long emails back to them and like consoling them or calming their fears, I don't feel like that's my job as an editor or a book cover designer. It's the same issue. I want to make them the best thing that they're hiring me for, which is why a lot of my clients don't feel comfortable with me, and sometimes I have to refund clients because they feel like we're not a good fit, or they feel like I'm not really listening to them. That happens a lot. You need to be aware, if you're paying someone a lot of money, do you want a relationship? Do you want a friend? Or do you want a professional who's going to give you the best work that you're paying for? And you need to be aware of that. You may not, just because you don't feel great or you don't feel like they're investing in you and the relationship, that doesn't mean they're not good at what they do. And you've got to kind of be aware of that. You don't necessarily want to look for an editor who's nice, because that doesn't mean they're the best editor. The other weird thing is, like with book cover design, I can make a book cover and you can see it. I know that it's good. With editing, I can edit a book and authors will never know. Like when I edit a book, I'll edit everything. There will be red on every page. There will be like 10 comments on every page. I do a very thorough job, but there's no way to compare my editing with someone else's editing. Every editor has different styles. They'll notice different things. They'll change different things. You probably want an editor who has a lot of experience in your genre or editing books for your genre, or at least an editor who is a fan of your genre, because they're going to know like whether you're doing something weird or whether you're doing something that's normal for that genre. So they've got to know that. If they don't know what's normal for that genre, that's going to be a problem, because they'll just fix your writing, but they won't fix your level of reader satisfaction, which, like I said, is really the important thing. So I would find an editor who enjoys the genre or reads the topics that you're interested in writing about. And for nonfiction, someone who knows a lot about those topics. It's not crucial. Like I used to do a lot of academic editing, and I didn't know anything about. They're doing scientific research, like chemical research about things, but they were non-native speakers, and I could see even when they're using all this jargon and all these huge words that I don't understand, I could still take apart the sentence and see what's wrong with it and fix the grammatical issues. So in some cases, you still want someone who can fix things, but since you're writing popular fiction or nonfiction, I hope, if you're not, you still just, I was going to say, you need someone who's going to fix the story always. If you're writing a literary fiction or memoir, you still need someone who's going to make it a more satisfying story, but their level of writing is also going to have to be higher. They're going to have to be really good writers. It doesn't mean that they have published books, because you can be a profoundly, I want to say profoundly good, but that's an awful choice of words. You can just be a very good writer and still not be able to finish your own stories. That's a different issue. That doesn't mean you're not a good writer. You can be a great editor, and a lot of editors, they understand story structure and they understand writing, and they're not writers themselves. They don't write their own books, but that doesn't mean they're not great at what they do. So finding an editor, it's a challenge, because there's no way to tell. I was going to say, like, when you've seen my editing, you can't, like if I do a sample edit, it's hard to take 2 sample edits from 2 different editors and compare them together and say which one's better. The only thing is, of course, editors should catch every typo and every grammatical mistake, and there are some that don't, which is mind-boggling. It happens, but if you're going to send out samples, don't send out easy tricks like misspelled words. Send out hard tricks like, I think they're called homonyms. I should know this, but 2 words that sound the same but are spelled differently, like there or there, or it's, with the apostrophe or not. Those are the things that can be tricky. Even when I'm reading, even every time I come to an it's or an it's with an apostrophe or not, I have to stop and think, is it possessive or not? Because I know that's easy to miss. So it's those little things. It's those little things that usually, like 2 words that are spelled differently, that aren't very common words, but sound the same. Those are the things that an editor, unless they have an amazing vocabulary and they know the difference, that they might miss. So you might want to sneak a few of those in a sample edit. You do want to get a sample edit. You want to make sure that that you're getting a sample edit to kind of see if they can do it. But the problem is, like I'm editing 2 books right now. One of them is really well written. I'm like 20% in. There's no problems yet. There's no typos or grammatical mistakes yet. So I could do a sample edit and not fix anything. And that's a problem, because how would you know if I'm a good editor? There are little things, like there's some repetition, there's some clunky sentences that could be better. I can fix those things and talk about why I fixed them. But the really important stuff is it satisfying? Does the story satisfy like the beginning? Does the whole journey of the story matter? And does it work? That's not something I can do in a sample edit unless I read the whole thing, and I'm not going to do that unless they're paying me. So it's hard to find an editor who's going to like to know that they're going to be able to fix those important things with just a sample edit. So you do want to kind of look at how they edit. Do they have a game plan? What are they looking for? Like now, I didn't used to say this, but if I was editing now, I would probably say, I'm not just going to look at the proofreading. I'm only going to edit a book if I'm going to take story architecture and story structure and really fix that book and make sure it has those essential pieces, because I know that's important for a best-selling book. And some authors would be okay with that and they'd hire me, and some authors wouldn't. I don't do editing anymore. But I think that would be an important thing to know if you're hiring an editor, whether they're going to really focus on those big level things. That's also why you might want to you may want to break it up and look for someone who can give you a manuscript review, which can cost, like $200. Look for a really good manuscript critique or review, get someone to read it and tell you what's wrong with the story first, because that's the important stuff that's going to matter. Hire that person who's good at that skill, then later hire a really good proofreader or line editor who can go through and make it better. But those might be two different roles that the same person may not be equipped to really handle both things well. So something else to be aware of, you might want to break that process up and not just look like when you finish a book, you just want to get it done, you want to publish it. I would caution you against that. I would hire a story critique, a manuscript review, someone who's an expert in story and can help you tell you what's wrong with it, even like nonfiction, because that's mostly about organization, to go through and tell you how you can make this story better. That would be a great investment that's different from line editing and copy editing, which is something that would come later. I feel like I kind of rambled in this video, but I also feel like I said some things you need to know, so I hope that it was useful. There aren't many more. I'm going to start talking now about what you can do to fix your story by yourself. Self-editing, which is kind of the purpose of this video series. We do have some free guides and resources. There's a lot of checklists. So before you even think about hiring an editor, you can get these resources and just go through your book yourself and be aware of, here's 100 things that common amateur writers always do wrong. Make sure you don't do those things in your book. That's an easy thing. It's a checklist, Once you become aware of those issues, when you read through your novel, it'll be very easy for you to spot those issues and fix them by yourself, which can save you a lot of money. So I'll talk about those in the next video.